Oh, we talking about Harvard today. It's a lot going on. We might be the only podcast not fully discussing Kevin. Uh, the beef with the comedians and Cat Williams and all that stuff. But before we get to that stuff, Harvard, what is going on the other side? Oh, Happy New Year, everybody. I'm about to throw it to our resident world traveler superhero. His Clark Kent Superman days. I don't know where he's been, but our fearless leader today, our Harvard alum today. His people. Actually, let's just make him a little bit bigger.
What do you mean by my people?
This is what I mean by your people. It's all you, buddy. What is going on?
What up, y'all? What up? Welcome back. Happy New Year, everybody. Yo, man, 2024. It's been like 2 weeks and shit's already popping off. Look at David Castillo, the bearded knowledge, man. He can't contain all the things that have been happening. As always, it's Doc's favorite part of the show. I want to say hi. We're going to get into some very deep controversy today. I will be in charge of the breakdown, not only because it's my week, but considering we're talking about Harvard, these three cats, they were talking smack before the show, everybody. Talking smack about the Harvard people and the elites. But this is Jubilee and Doc's favorite part. We got to do a quick check-in. Ladies first, as always. How's everybody doing? Happy New Year, Jubilee. How you doing? Centaur 12. Happy New Year to you, too.
Happy New Year. I'm so happy to be here. I am great. I spent the month of December traveling to Aruba. We went to Orlando,
Jamaica.
I wish. Jamaica is really one of my. It's my mom's birthplace, so it has a special place in my heart. But yeah, a lot of sun, more sun than darkness and coldness in December, and spent a lot of time with my mom, who was visiting with me for several weeks. So that was great. And here we are. I'm happy to be here. It's 2024. I was telling Charles before we hopped on that I am going back into the classroom for maybe about 16 weeks to help some struggling readers as a reading interventionist, and I am happy about that. It's a straight path to impact.
Wow.
With some other opportunities that I'll be doing in terms of leadership coaching, but that's like what's new on my horizon. So happy to be here.
We got to just move you to El Paso, come back and help out with the school down here, man. I mean, I'm sure those kids need help, but our kids need help. Got 80% emerging bilingual students. Doc, David, how y'all doing?
I am good. It's good to be back. Let's see. Things are slowly starting to kind of pick up again. And the break was good. Came down with I got COVID. And then right after COVID, I got a flu, which was much worse than COVID. Had me down for like a week, basically. But was able to recover and got to spend some time out in Joshua Tree National Park, which is in Southern California near the Mojave Desert. Beautiful, beautiful location. And what else did we do? Just a lot of family stuff, a lot of outdoor stuff. The weather's been really nice. And also it was good. My son had a 3-week break from school, and I had a 3-week break as well, supporting him. So, the last couple of months have been tricky, but we're starting to pick that up again at school. Probably having to do too much work as a parent. Well, there's never too much work, but I'm I'm trying to get his school to do their part as well, and that's the challenge. But yeah. all in all, it's good. Seems
Bro,
like
you should go and talk to them and be like, yo, man, I used to run schools, brother.
Believe me.
I used to run these things, man. You sit here
Exactly.
trifling. I talk that shit. Yeah, man.
Do you know who you're talking to? The news has been interesting as of late. You know, with this topic that we're going to talk about today, and just everything seems like such a big scandal, and maybe we'll see at the end if they're all connected or not.
Escándalo, es un escándalo. Doc, how you feeling, brother?
Man, it's been an interesting holiday season. I have to give a special shout out and love to our beloved Mama Toya. That woman's just been instrumental and incredible over these last. It was very interesting last month with losses, not just for me, but people from my team. But we're not gonna focus on that. It's a new year. Just ready to work with my team and get stuff moving and going. I will say this though, I'm saddened by our, as a society, infatuation with mess. Like, it's just, we love mess. Like, you just invite that in all the time. Like,
yeah, man.
So it's unfortunate. I just don't think that's good for anybody's soul. I just don't. I just think it would eventually weigh on you. And but it sucks. But anyway, but I did get to do something before, towards the end of the year. Last year, I was in Philadelphia for an event, and Mama Toya and I got to do this shared interview, and it was one of my favorite interviews. Y'all know I've stepped away from large platforms and stuff, and I have to say our platform isn't large, but I used to be on a lot larger ones. I kind of shunned that. And she was able, because it was her and some other friends, I stepped back in on that. So whenever that's published, I'll make sure that we share it. But yes, it was a great interview, and I'm just very proud of her. So thank you for that love, Mama Toya. And let me throw it back to you. Oh man, this is all you, man. Let me get out this corner, brother. Let's put you up there. What is going on with your people, brother? What's happening?
Man, I love the you people thing, man. Like when I went to college and I came from Texas and they had just elected George Bush Jr., who I did not like, who I did not elect, who I still don't like. Everyone's like, this is your people, man. You're from Texas. I was like, look, look. Hey, I'm from El Paso, man. Like the rest of Texas forgot that we were even here. I always make the joke that they think that we were seceded to Mexico 5 years ago. And then like, everyone would be like, ooh, you Harvard people. I'm like, hey, man, listen, I'm going to stick up for Harvard. I'm going to stick up for it. I'm going to stick up for my place, the Kennedy School of Government. It was an incredibly beautiful place. I was there in grad school. But we're going to talk about what the hell is going on at Harvard. Who is this person? What is going on? Why is this creating so much controversy? So I'm going to already get us into the breakdown. Because this is exciting. So for those of you that are wondering, I had a wonderful Christmas. It was great. Happy New Year. I was out and about. I will be out and about. And eventually I'd like to be out and about out east to figure out, holy crap. So, before I get into this, I want to just quickly break down a preface and say this entire issue is marred in incredible controversy, everybody. Like this is, as I started going down this rabbit hole, because on the surface, and I'll get into this, it looks like one thing. And as you keep spiraling down, holy crap. So what does that mean? First, what is happening? The president of Harvard University, her name was Claudine Gay, and her name is still Claudine Gay. She's just no longer the president of Harvard University, has resigned. And this is thrown into a massive kerfuffle because at the very, very basic end, and what people have read and seen, is that she resigned because supposedly there was some plagiarism going on way back about 27 years ago in her PhD dissertation that may or may not have been the most foolproof of assigning responsibilities and acknowledgments to some of her words. Now, people getting a little caught in arms about this plagiarism, but my breakdown is going to be a bit of a David Castillo breakdown because I've got a lot of stuff to get out to our audience to share. Why is this such a big deal? So first off, ladies and gentlemen, this has less to do with anti-plagiarism and a whole lot more to do with anti-Semitic protests, comments, and rhetoric going on at 3 specific universities. And I know that's a mouthful, so let me just say, students are talking a whole lot of anti-Jewish shit at 3 specific universities that were brought up in a congressional hearing. Now, preface, this kind of rhetoric from students, basically a lot of them throwing protests. This is after the attack on Israel that predicated in several thousands of deaths. From what we've calculated, more deaths in this incident that happened to Israel than in 9/11, just to give a scale of how many deaths that occurred. And it has sparked a interesting sentiment on college campuses around the country, where their campus students are taking more of the side of the Palestinians than they are the Israelis, basically saying that if the Palestinians weren't so subjugated, things like this wouldn't happen. And it goes way deeper than that, but you're wondering, how the hell does this have anything to do with Harvard and these universities? Well, because a lot of student protests are happening. These protests are, in my opinion, getting a little out of hand. And what do I mean by that? I don't think students are fully informed on the difference between Palestine, the difference between Hamas. They're saying the phrase, as you will hear quite often, from the river to the sea, let Palestine be free, which, by the way, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea is all of Israel. So if you're saying that should be all of Palestine, are you calling for the extermination of the Jews? And this has been a situation where it's been happening on college campuses across the country. However, there were 3 universities that were picked on, if you will, when they were brought into a congressional hearing about anti-Semitic comments and anti-Semitic rhetoric. Those 3 universities, ladies and gentlemen: Harvard, which is my alma mater for grad school; the University of Pennsylvania, which is an Ivy League; and MIT, which is not considered as part of the Ivy League, but Ivy League-esque, meaning it's one of those elite universities. Why those 3? Because those 3 are elite and considered to be elite, meaning, let me rephrase that, considered to be elite, meaning they generate headlines, man. People know Harvard all the way and from Argentina to Tibet. It is a well-known university, as is MIT, as is the University of Pennsylvania. Now, 3 presidents were brought into Congress to testify about this anti-Semitic rhetoric. Sally Kornbluth at MIT, Elizabeth McGill at the University of Pennsylvania, and Claudine Gay at Harvard. Their comments during the congressional hearing were not good. Basically, they would not answer a yes or no question about whether or not they condemn anti-Semitic, not just hate speech, but basically calls for genocide of the Israeli people. They just couldn't answer whether that's something that they would condemn or not. They, at the time, were basically saying, this is a free speech issue. We, as university presidents, shouldn't be intervening in the free speech. We should be responding to the First Amendment. But as we get a little bit deeper, it's hard to look at this and be like, so yes, free speech is an issue, but, and this is an educational show, many of you all may or may not know, I majored in political philosophy. I know a ton about the Constitution. If free speech is protected unless you're creating a clear and present danger to a group of people, meaning, best example is always, you can't yell fire inside of a theater. So if you're in a movie theater and you're like, fire, 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 and like people are rushing out and people get injured and you're like, I've got freedom of speech. That's not protected. My favorite word, the F-bomb, also interestingly not protected. If some people consider a word or a statue, famously the Statue of David was considered to be obscene, that could not also, that's one of those things that are not protected under free speech. If you're creating a clear and imminent danger, basically calling for the genocide of a group of people, that could spark violence against Jewish students, that is something that is not protected in the First Amendment, and this is catching a ton of fire. So this is why Claudine Gay and these other two university presidents are in the headlines right now. This has everything to do with this congressional hearing, but then all of a sudden, this whole thing about her plagiarizing and her dissertation came into the play. So that is where I want to leave it. These are the facts that stand, ladies and gentlemen, and we've got a lot to talk about. So one of our first questions is, what are the core issues surrounding the controversy at Harvard and her resignation? And I will just open it up and say, I think that on the surface, this plagiarism issue is something that people are talking about, but as it's just discussed, there's a whole lot of other issues. So I just want to get the group to be like, all right, where do you all stand? And how do you all feel about this whole Claudine Gay thing?
Well, you know, I always got a song that goes, money, 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 money. Because that's, to me,
oh, man, I heard that song in New Jack City. It's a good ass song.
That's it. I feel like I don't have that much to say on this topic. It's a teachable and unfortunate moment, and it goes back to money. This is how our country is run. It doesn't run. America does not run on Duncan. It runs on wealth, and the people who have wealth.
There's some context here, Jubilee. So what do you mean? Like our audience is hearing plagiarism and anti-Semitic rhetoric. Where's money coming from?
I don't think that her having to resign or being pushed out has anything to do with either of those things. And I think with again, like to maybe Charles and I were talking about this before, but we always talk about, oh yeah, you did say that, Charles, like us loving mess, our country loving mess, right? And like you take a sound bite, and then people take that sound bite and make a bunch of decisions based on the sound bite without the context, right? And so, now Claudine Gay is in a place where she's writing her own narrative and she's trying to explain like what happened or what have you. But I think like the other people who were given the benefit of the doubt or their demise was not like that of hers, I think that if you looked at the context, then you would see, oh, wait a minute, this is kind of stretching it a bit, So that causes me to rule out whatever they're saying that it is, the plagiarism and the anti-Semitism, and it causes me to look in other areas that may have caused them to respond in such a harsh way. And I think that is connected to money.
Yep. And I want to dive a little bit into this. Before we move on, I do want to talk about the nature of the so-called plagiarism, right? So this is because this is how it was framed, right? She's the president of a prestigious academic institution, and when you have your top leadership that are being accused of things like plagiarism, right? That kind of cuts through a number of different layers. However, when we look at really what happened, it's a 1997 dissertation, right? Her doctoral dissertation. And the Harvard Corporation conducted its own independent review when all of this came out. And what they found was that there were essentially, there was language that was duplicated and not correctly cited, right? And Harvard Corporation also found that, whatever they want to call it, they're not calling it plagiarism. They're saying it doesn't even rise to the level of research misconduct, and they were not deemed intentional or reckless. Gay submitted corrections to her dissertation, these things generally happen. So I think we have to talk about the technicalities of the plagiarism. It sounds like some of the language that was duplicated in her dissertation actually came from her advisor. So when you're going through a doctoral process, you have an advisor, you are the advisee. And it sounds like there was some documentation or citation work that just didn't happen. And it's since been cleared up. So to ask the question, like, was it real authentic plagiarism? I think you would have to say no, right? Was it possibly sloppy? Yes, right. So then that takes us back to like, well, then really what's happening here? What Jubilee is alluding to. Something that happened in between this hearing and now, like the next thing that happened after the hearing was the anti-woke machine went into basically, look her up, look up her background, research everything about her, see if they could find anything on her, and they found something, right? People that are,
from 30 years ago, dude.
I mean,
people.
That's like digging up the fact that I didn't pay a late fee on my library card back in 1987, dude.
It's insane. So, and it's not, people just didn't find it. Like people went out and looked for it and they found it. They turned it into a campaign against her. People like, Christopher Rufo and all these kinds of people.
Who is that?
It was orchestrated. This whole thing was orchestrated, right? They went after her. And now, here we are, right? So.
Yeah, I can add some context to that. Also, I want to show some love. We got a lot of people. Alonzo showing love there. Dr. Simmons. Also a bit of good news that's happened in the new year from what I've learned. Friend of the show who's come on and co-hosted with us and been a guest multiple times. Ray Ankrum is no longer Mr. Ray Ankrum. It is now Dr. Ray Ankrum. He has finished his dissertation. Right. So let's show. We're
gonna check it. We're gonna look through his dissertation.
I mean, yeah, you can look. Yeah, exactly. As someone here who's actually done a dissertation for the people out there, right? Like, the assertion that she was plagiarizing and stealing from her own advisor is just ludicrous. And if you understand that process, dissertations are sloppy. Most of them are not very good. It is a process that you go through to cross into becoming a doctor. And that is something that your advisory committee, you hope that they catch. I remember being very paranoid about plagiarism, and my chair, who is now actually going to Harvard and will be a professor at Harvard now. But, I was very nervous about that because you don't want to, I was over, citing things just out of fear, right? And so, you have a team that kind of helps you. I do think it's important because there is a timeline here. And again, like, because it's such a sensitive nature, I don't want to offend. July 1st of last year is when Dr. Gay was appointed the first Black president and the first Black woman president of this school, which came with its own bout of scrutiny or whatever the case was. October 7th is when the first attack from Hamas had happened. And then October 8th was Harvard became the first major school drowning in controversy in the wake of the Hamas attack. And they did not have a statement. Harvard would not go on to release a statement until October 10th. It's very important. This is where powers that be started to really start cracking down on a lot of the universities, right? And interestingly enough, we did a show where we talked about the just sheer amount of money that certain universities have versus others, right? Endowment size. For those that don't know, which we said in one other episode, Harvard's endowment is $51 billion with a B. Howard, the most recognizable HBCU, I don't think was at $1 billion. Like, just for context. All right. So that's important to note because
$100 billion.
It's important to note. So then the Harvard, and I think it's really funny that it's the Harvard Corporation. I think that it is very fitting that we're talking about the Harvard Corporation. They did their own, they started doing their own investigation. These people get called to the congressional hearing, which you talked about, and they were not happy with those three leaders' responses. And then the witch hunt began. Now, two of those people have resigned. One did not resign because the attacks on this other president, you cannot call this other president anti-Semitic because they happen to be Jewish. So there were a lot of lessons. There was a lot of, and then they wrote these letters of support. Her university supported her. She came with some harder, condemnations of things along the way, but eventually she would resign. I just wanted to make sure because I know people with this type of topic are definitely going to be hunting to make sure we were factual and just saying what happened without any thoughts or anything. That was everything I just said was reported. Now I'll go into, I guess, the thoughts of it, right? I learned some lessons in this. And in this, I learned that, also, Harvard lost $1 billion. So people pulled their funds, including people, what was the brother's name? Ken Griffin, who gives $500 million a year, took back his $300 million that he had given thus far at the time. His name is on the side of the building of the Grad School of Arts and Science, and he demanded that action be taken. And a lot of people demanded, and not just big donors. There was a large protest of alumni that said, I'm going to donate $1. I'm going to change it. I'm going to donate $1. So they eventually lost $1 billion and counting. We actually won't know the full numbers because universities don't publish their endowment or their fundraising efforts until the end of the fiscal year, and they're on business fiscal year. So that'll probably be June, July. So I learned that money talks. People really look out for their own. I think that, people look out for their own. I think that they were going to find something on these people. And I think that third one that's still out there, I don't think that person is safe either. They started to dig into this, and this is the thing that stuck. And I think what is so egregious for a lot of people in that there's a lot of feelings. This is a Black woman. I think people felt like she was unprotected. I think that there was a lot of people that, would not stand with her publicly when she needed it at the time. I do know that to her credit and to her benefit, there was a parachute there. There is a nice golden parachute there, but the issue is still like, how are people like being protected in these moments? Purse power is paramount. People can talk about morals. They can talk about standing on business. They can talk about all these different things. Now, this is the difference between like I am jealous as a Black person. I am jealous. Black Twitter will drag you. They might humiliate you. They might, have jokes and memes about you. But there are other groups. Shit happens. And things doesn't have to be said or done. For Rufo to catch the fire, I mean, the way that he caught it to get this person out of here on these very, very weak charges that even when they looked at the charges, they did not stand or hold up, I think was a problem. And David, can you hear the comments from me while I'm giving this last little point? And then I would say the last thing that I learned out of this and that everybody should learn is that powerful people focus more on impact rather than intention or how the game is played. Jay-Z said it better. Moral victories are for minor league coaches. What that means is, people, is that there are people that don't care how it gets done. They don't care what has to happen for it to get done. Mm-hmm. If you can't get her on the anti-Semitism, get her on the plagiarism. If you didn't get her on that, get her on something else. It is the same play that I think that very, very conservative Republicans are planning to run in the next election. I don't think this is why they don't care what Trump's background is. It does not matter, these criminal things. They want to win. And I think that there are some groups that want to win a certain type of way, but they feel better about the process and the morality and how they play the game. And I think that there are some groups, not groups, but they're just individuals. And I'm not characterizing anybody. I'm just pointing out, like, there are people that run this world, that run this country, that say, we're going to win by any means necessary. And they mean it. And they absolutely mean it. And so I think there's been a lot that's happened here. I have different thoughts. Just that side, I think, is complicated and nuanced. I also don't really care about the Ivy League. The Black people that I know, the Black people that I love, Miss Helen, my aunt, the people that feed me, that take care of me, have no idea what is happening or going on at Harvard, and they never will care. And guess what? Harvard doesn't really care too much about them. And I think that also, this woman was wronged, and it was terrible what had happened. It was racist, and it was targeted, and I want to name that. And she's also about to get $800,000 as she goes home. And I also think that if Dr. Gay, and I will ride for her however you all need me to. And I know that Dr. Gay can go to almost any HBCU right now and step in, and they will make room for her as either president or whatever she wants to kind of step in. And I think it draws a larger question. Should we keep putting our eggs into these elite baskets? By the way, a third of Harvard's funding, when it was started, there's a report that we can post, is off of slave labor. A third of it. Three of the five initial larger donors that's helped start Harvard made most of their money in the slave trade actively. So if you are as outraged about a misplagiarized citation, then I would like to see that same energy for something that was built on those backs. But then it draws a larger question. Should the best of our talent be going to these elite places, or should we go to places that were built to be a safe haven for us, and what that means? And what does it mean when you don't show up to that place until the elite reminds you that you Black? Those are my thoughts, and I'm going to shut the hell up for the rest of the time.
Like, first, you ain't going to shut the hell up for the rest
I
of
am.
Like,
I
you're not
am.
Charles Cole, man.
Damn it, I am.
Dog, man, it's going to be good as hell.
I'm about to mute myself right now. I'm shutting up.
You ain't going to jump off the soapbox. No, man. And I will say this, but that was incredible. And by the way, that should be a show. Like, we need to talk about the lift on affirmative action and college admissions. Charles, I think you posed one hell of a question that I need to write down is, should our talent be going to these places that don't care for us and maybe tokenize us a great deal, or should our talents be used elsewhere? I just want to make a note of that because I think that's a dope ass show, and I think I'm going to write it down right now. Because that coincides so much with students right now going through the college process and deliberating about, is race something that I should be worried about? Is something that is a grace and something that is a point of pride? Or is it right now looked upon as maybe a negative? Like, should I not be announcing my race in the college admissions process? Because has this become such a hot button issue that people are very confused about whether or not it is a positive or negative? But I just want to put a stamp on that. I got a lot to say about what you just said, but as a gentleman, man, I want to open it up to David and Jubilee first to react, because I got a lot to say.
I'll go quickly because I feel like I keep going. I keep wanting to talk about the actual facts of what happened. And so I talked about the plagiarism issue. And I kind of want to go back and talk about, why Dr. Gay ended up in hot water coming out of that congressional hearing, right? And so the way that it played out is that, she and others were being pressed on the limits of free speech on campus, particularly the use of chants like intifada, which essentially breaks down in Arabic as an uprising or rebellion, right? It's not an American value. And also, the use of the phrase "from the river to the sea," which Omar brought up earlier. And I think maybe some words were left out, which Dr. Gay then corrected a couple of days later. But at that point, the ship had sailed, the machine was in motion. But it centers around these two things, and I want to focus on like from the river to the sea, right? And so, you studied at Harvard. We've all gone through, U.S. history course. We've memorized and sang songs. I think one of them happens to include the phrase "from sea to shining sea," right? There's also this American concept or idea of manifest destiny, right? An angel guiding, the early Americans on their westward adventures and journeys through lands, keep in mind, that were already occupied by Native American peoples, right? So I think that thought just came to my head, like from the river to the sea, from sea to shining sea, manifest destiny. These are all basically the same concepts, but it's interesting because they, when used in the wrong context, apparently people feel threatened, and these terms can be weaponized to, in my opinion, squelch free speech. So I just wanted to put that out there as a former history teacher as well. This is the kind of thing I would like drill down into.
Yeah, man, I got a lot.
Go ahead,
I got
brother.
a lot to talk about that shit, man. Like, you want to talk about James K. Polk and Manifest Destiny, but here's where, like, I mean, David's so damn smart, man. Just to put a little bit of context, when James K. Polk, who was our 11th president, basically was like, we want to live from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. It's our manifest destiny to own all this land. That came at a genocide. That was the genocide of the Native Americans. That was the absolute dissolution. So when we talk about this river to the sea chime, if you know your history, David just said it so astutely, you're basically calling for the genocide of Israelis, whether you know it or not. And this is the biggest problem I have, because I'm listening to these kids scream this shit. And I remember being a college kid, and I mean, like, yo, aren't you at a good college? Like, aren't you in college to begin with? Like, shouldn't you, regardless of whether or not you're at like Bunker Hill Community or Harvard, be asking, hey, what does this mean when I keep screaming from the river to the sea? And shouldn't I know that we're calling for like genocide? Now, Talk said a bunch of stuff. I want to kind of get back into this and provide even a bit more context. And I really do want to answer this question about should we be at elite universities and so forth. I will say a couple things. One, whether or not you care about Harvard, Harvard is one of the most globally recognized names, period. So, yeah, some people may not give a shit about Harvard. No, like this is elite and all that stuff. But I want to bring in two comments here. One, understand that the reason that Harvard was brought into this, and that she was kind of wrong place, wrong time, wrong comment, wrong shit at a congressional hearing, is that when you're at a place like Harvard, everyone pays attention, but it's also much pride to UT Longhorns. If you say the University of Texas in Tibet, in Buenos Aires, Argentina, in Melbourne, Australia, people will be like, where? But you mention Harvard and any of those places, it's immediate recognition and immediate prestige. So yes, Doc, on one end, people know Harvard, but on the other end, it was a political utensil to basically trap the Harvard, UPenn, and MIT presidents, because those universities are so prestigious, into a situation that David is talking about, which is, why did we have a congressional hearing about this? Why only those three universities when it's been going on from Berkeley to University of Texas to University of Michigan to Wake Forest? All those universities have had massive anti-Semitism talks, but it's only these three university presidents that have been called up. I have a particular theory about that. And it also sparks from, just to give a bit more context, if everyone's like, well, what the hell is going on? There was a congressional hearing about anti-Semitism. There was, interestingly enough, a Republican representative from New York. And I'm like, damn, man, New York still has Republican representatives. Cool. Her name is Elise Stefanik, and Ms. Stefanik actually is a Harvard alum. And she was the one that was grilling Dr. Gay and Dr. McGill and Dr. Kornbluth about, is a yes or no question. Are you saying that the anti-Semitic speech and the call for genocide is something that should be allowed on your campus? And the fact that these three presidents floundered pretty terribly during this congressional hearing is what caused enormous backlash. So for our audience, that comment cost Harvard $1 billion.
So
right then and there.
I want to insert
jump in.
Insert some info, right? So I'm looking up just the transcripts from the congressional hearing. This is Dr. Gay. This is a part of her 5-minute speech, right? She says, I have heard from faculty, students, staff, and alumni of incidents of intimidation and harassment. I have seen reckless and thoughtless rhetoric shared in person and online, on campus and off. I have listened to leaders in our Jewish community who are scared and disillusioned. At the same time, I know members of Harvard's Muslim and Arab communities are also hurting. During these past months, the world, our nation, and our campuses have also seen a rise of incidents of Islamophobia. During these difficult days, I have felt the bonds of our community strain. In response, I have sought to confront hate while preserving free expression. This is difficult work, and I know that I have not always gotten it right. The free exchange of ideas is the foundation upon which Harvard is built, and safety and well-being are the prerequisites of engagement in our community. Without both these things, our teaching and research mission flounder, I guess it's supposed to say, right? And then the last piece she says is anti-Semitism is a symptom of ignorance, and the cure for ignorance is knowledge. Harvard must model what it means to preserve free expression while combating prejudice and preserving the security of our community. We are undertaking that hard, long-term work with the attention and intensity it requires. And then she thanks the committee for their time. It doesn't sound like she floundered at all.
Right. And they were not happy with how they were not happy with the vigor that they thought that she should have came harder. And like I read it how you read it, Jubilee. I listened to it. I get that she was supposed to. I think she was trying to be measured and kind of say, I'm trying to protect all of the people. But I also want to just add before you go there, I'm going to add this. Like, there's a shift. And it said, this is from Politico. It's a study out of Quinnipiac. But it said there's a shift largely driven by respondents under 35 years old who overwhelmingly say they disapprove of Israel's response to October 7th Hamas attack, 66%, and they have greater sympathy for Palestinians in the conflict than Israelis, right? Like, there's a generational divide, and they cut it at the 35-year mark, right? You have Harvard students, these very smart young people that have been, that are told about free speech and things like that. And again, I'm not defending anybody or whatever the case is, but I can absolutely understand if you are a president of a university, how you're trying to go about handling something, and when your school is having like this kind of issue. And I would also want to say, nooses have been found at a lot of these universities as well. A lot of these things have happened. I don't know and there may have been one, so forgive me if I've misspoken, but I know for sure that has not been as widely publicized or congressional hearing in the same type of way. And I also know that there's been genocide happening since I was a child that's still happening today on the continent of Africa, right? Like, again, I'm not trying to turn it. This is not, and again, this is a tough topic to converse about. You know what I mean? I just,
that's why we're talking about it, man.
But I don't want anyone necessarily offended. I'm not like Hamas, from what I understand, is just a terrible, terrible organization and group. There are innocent people that are Jewish, and there are innocent Palestinians, and there is a lot of death that is happening in very, very, very gruesome ways. I'm not surprised that these young people and these students are taking up the kind of way they're taking up. And again, as David just went through, I don't think most people know that saying. I think people are chanting something without understanding the overtones of what that necessarily is until somebody tells them, because when was they going to learn that? Did they learn that in grade school? Did they learn that in middle school? Did they learn that in high school? Like, I didn't get that type of education. I'm sitting here with 3 degrees, right? And also, I went to a PWI myself, so I want to be fair. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't go there. I think the same way on Black Twitter right now, when Jonathan Majors is now with Megan Good and they saw him running from his white girlfriend, they saying, well, don't come to a Black woman now that things are tough or this, that, and the third. To be honest with y'all, I don't care who you date. I don't care what race they are, any of that stuff. I think that some people are going to have similar sentiment to Dr. Gay saying, if she does go to an HBCU now, like we wasn't good enough for you at this time. Like, why would we be good enough for you now? And I would think that would be unfair and unruly. And I think all this is unwieldy. All this is mess, like I started out saying. And I hope and pray that she actually ends up at an incredible HBCU institution and makes it better if that's what she chooses. And if she's cool. I just want to make sure, I just make sure I say those things because I'll get drugged.
I want to agree and disagree. So and let me come around to this because I think that President Gay was specifically targeted, and I'll get to that because this was David's comment. A couple things.
Omar, you brought me and Jubilee together today, brother. It's a beautiful thing.
Good.
We have never.
Oddly, I love that y'all are together because I'm actually gonna, for once, man, disagree. She fucked up. She floundered. That comment. Hear me out. Hear me out. Then
go ahead.
Hear me out. What do I mean by that? All right. What I mean by that is that she gave one of the most eloquent ways of discussing how to handle First Amendment rights and freedom of speech for her university students in a way that I found unbelievably commendable. As a woman, as a person who is leading Harvard, when you're in a congressional hearing and you know that you're getting targeted, which I don't think she fully knew how targeted she was being by the right.
That's usually the case.
I think she floundered in understanding the assignment of what are they going after you for and how to handle what I believe to be a histrionic hypocrite in Elise Stefanik. So Elise Stefanik was the representative from Harvard that was grilling her, asking for a yes or no question. By the way, that chick got kicked out of the IOP, the Institute of Politics, the prestigious Institute of Politics at Harvard. She was on the board. Guess what she got kicked out for?
Don't say it. Don't say it.
Don't say
it. Oh, yeah, you know exactly what she got kicked out for. This crazy broad was an election denier and advocated for President Trump to still be the president, denying the election results, which, by the way, incited the fucking riot in January 6th. So she actually hypocritically incited violence and was coming down on a university president for not being strong enough. I mean, the hypocrisy is unimaginable. So don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying she floundered because she fucked up entirely. I'm saying, damn, she was set up. Mm-hmm. She didn't understand how much this woman was coming after her. A hard right person, which, by the way, let me get to my point, and then David, please chime in, because this is what David's been alluding to this whole time. What the Republican right has been trying to do from this congressional hearing with her resignation is trying to, during an election year, it's 2024, remove the stigma of the right being the anti-Semitic group. Because yes, the Republican right is anti-Semitic, and anti-Semitic sentiment has increased exponentially from Republicans, from the right, for years now, but particularly recently. And what they're saying is it's an election year. We got the stink of anti-Semitism on us. Look at us. Let's push the blame to not only elite universities, but the liberal left. Let them be the anti-Semitic ones. And I think this is something that Dr. Gay did not fully understand when she was making these comments in Congress, is that, girl, you're being targeted. You're being targeted to be the blame for anti-Semitic rhetoric in the United States. And you're getting set up to be basically the scapegoat for all of this anti-Semitic rhetoric, so that stink is no longer with Republicans, but on Democrats. And that's some shit. And that's my take on it.
What would have been, so how would her 5 minutes have been different if she was aware of these things that you're saying? Because it sounds like they wanted her to play ball and say everything about, protecting Jewish people and Jewish lives, and totally ignoring the other side of the conflict. Like, is that what you're saying? Like, is that what they would have wanted her to present? Because
I think no, Jubilee. Instead of like what was wanted to be set up, I think she was set up on purpose. I think that her answer needed to be very carefully calculated. It's why the president of, I believe, is it MIT? I think it was UPenn. UPenn. She eventually got, by the way, the president of UPenn also was forced to resign.
Yeah, she was gone. They got those two.
Yeah. And by the way, the president of UPenn came out with a huge apology video that she recorded herself after the congressional hearing to be like, this is how I feel about this. This is what I should have said, because I think she kind of caught wind of like, what should I have said? Look, if I was in that congressional hearing, I would have floundered and I would have fucked up too. I would have been set up and I wouldn't have seen it coming. So I don't blame Dr. Gay at all. I am just simply saying, damn, dude, like this woman was set up. I wish she had seen what was coming. In retrospect, Jubilee, what I would have said was something to the tune of like, as a university president, the First Amendment right for people to come out and be able to say what they want to say, no matter how hateful or how difficult, is something that I have to deal with, especially as a Black woman. I have to allow students to talk about anti-Black sentiment left and right. Now, however, if you're calling for the genocide and something that is going to invoke violence, as I said on this show, that is not protected by the First Amendment, I do condemn that. And I am absolutely saying that, yes, Harvard University is taking a firm stance against anti-Semitic rhetoric that could cause violence that is not protected in the First Amendment. Now,
what they wanted her to do, but they wanted her to expel every single one of those students that had anything to do in those groups that signed on to those letters. They wanted something that was they wanted something very extreme that I think that would have put her, like, they wanted a very clear, you know, act of power.
I mean, I think she could have easily. So I don't even think it's not even her. Right. So she's she's the president of Harvard. And what's the name of the firm? They have a communications firm that they partner with, Risa Heller Communications. They pay these people millions of dollars, right? She's not like showing up to the hearing in her Tesla in the morning, writing out her script. Like, this is something that is handed to her. It probably goes back and forth. They're paying millions of dollars to a communications firm. It's the role of the communications firm to kind of like test out this language. And I think if they could have simply added 1 or 2 sentences to her commentary, about, maybe saying something like it's not acceptable for any group to feel targeted on this campus or university. She went back and cleaned it up. 2 days later, it was too late. So I think, being, you're the president of a university. It's Harvard. It's a big job. It's a high pressure job. Even as the principal of a school, like, your words matter, right? You're the president of Harvard. Your words really matter. So I don't even know if it's like on her to say like she screwed up. I think they're paying millions of dollars to a communications firm to help them, manage their communications. And I think I
don't disagree, but being a lifelong Democrat, I'm like, damn, one thing that the Democrats can't get a hold of is good ass communication.
I'm telling you, man.
But I don't know if there was anything that she could have said if she did not go super Saiyan and scorch that earth and just really be like, this is where we're at. And I think people said, we need to remind you, like $1 billion evaporated into thin air. Like, again, the first thing that I said, there are 2 things to take away from this: that powerful people focus on the impact rather than the intent. So regardless, you're going to do what the hell we need you to do, or you're going to be gone. Like, it just is what it is. The same way that when Roger Goodell didn't like the coach for the Raiders, and they did all this probing, he the only one who had some racist stuff in his email, and then the probe stopped, right? Like, powerful people get results and powerful purse strings. The second thing is, I do think that she knew she was being set up because she's a Black person. She is a powerful, successful Black person. She is a powerful, successful Black person with a white husband. She is somebody that, listen, man, I feel like I'm being set up all the time. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's another Jay-Z song, Still, I'm not going to say it here. Like, again, like, you can be a Black person in the Benz, but you still in a coupe. So like again, man, they will remind you when you step out of this line. And again, when you play games, when you are in the mainstream and what is considered to be one of the most powerful institutions in the world, you are on their turf. And you can think you safe. You can think that you can say what you want. You can think that you can do your job. But damn it, you are tethered to certain things. And I'm glad that she at least is getting her money, because I think they could have dug that knife in more. And so, again, these are hard conversations to have and things, and there are things that we probably can't talk about on this thing and on this show. And what I mean by that is there are questions, there are things that my grandmama told me. Like, there are things that I've learned by being a young black man growing up in the places that I've grown up in. And when I get pulled over, I got to take my keys out and put them on the dashboard and show my hands. And other people don't know that life. Well, guess what? Like, you can get railroaded a little bit easier. You can think that you're a person. You can think that they rock with you. And I think that's where I asked the larger question. I don't know how I feel on the HBCU thing, because I lived in Oakland. It was very difficult for me to get there. So I went to a state school. But would she have been more protected if they would have called in an HBCU and this would have happened? And how would that have gone down? I don't know, right? But I think it's something that we have to start thinking about, because this is a reminder. If you are black, this is a reminder that no matter how far you think you've come and how much you think you made it, I got that line on you, and I will yank that thing back and I'll take it all away. As Cat Williams said, like, they showed me that you can be Kang the Conqueror, and in 2 weekends, your ass can be in the unemployment line. And I think
black or Latino.
And brown. And I think that there's other groups too. I'm not trying to exclude anybody, but I think that as a black person, I've seen 2 examples happening simultaneously where 2 people have gotten railroaded. I also saw a man running from a woman down the street away from her. And if you flip that around, his ass would have been under the jail. So again, not to get emotional, not to make it super black racial, I think this is one of the best shows we've ever had, to be quite honest with you. But I think it's very, very difficult. And again, to the Jewish community, to Palestinians, I'm ignorant on a larger scale about this entire thing. And I do want there to be some type of peace. And I know that there are things that I don't understand. So hopefully I'm not disrespected or offended anybody in any of these groups. But as a black person, I'm watching this, and it is fucking with me deeply as a black person. And I don't even rock with Dr. Gay like that, aside from this issue that's happening, because I want to go back to not caring about Harvard.
One quick interjection, then we got to go do this.
I know.
You asked a quick question, but the teacher in me can't hold back. And I want to just, for our audience, kind of state what's going on. And then when I answer one of Alonzo's question, Hamas was a political organization that got started, I believe, in 1996. Maybe it was 93, but I think it was 1996. They were a political organization that were actually pretty midline and were advocating for a peaceful solution, even talks about the 2-state solution. That has gone completely awry now. They are a far right-wing, radical terrorist organization now, under the guise of a political party that is essentially, calling for like extermination. It does not let Netanyahu off the hook, because he's a far right winger that's like, we gotta do what we gotta do to make sure that we don't get exterminated, including killing a bunch of people. Not something I advocate for, but this is something that our students don't understand, is that the Palestinian people are looking for a peaceful solution. And I don't think that the Israeli prime minister or anyone in Hamas is coming to the plate with what the people of Israel want and what the people of Palestine want. And therein lies exactly what the two of y'all have been talking about, is that the power structure oftentimes does not listen to or move with the will of the people. And this coincides directly with this Dr. Gay thing. You couldn't have put it better, is that there are very strong marionette strings when you're the president of a university, especially a place like Harvard. You're going to do what we need you to do. You're going to raise money. You're going to up the profile. And if you get out of suit, you will become the sacrificial lamb. And I unfortunately think that these 3 folks, particularly Dr. Gay, were set up.
Yeah,
I think that the far right-wing Republican side of the party were excited to set them up, become their scapegoats. And I think it's a damn shame what happened, because they became the consequences of a political motivated agenda. And that just sucks altogether. Like, it just blows and it's shitty. And I think you're right about being black or brown in this country. And that's why we got our show. Last thoughts, dude, because I mean, we're already over time, man.
Oh, man, you did a good job, man.
It's a crazy ass show.
I'll go first. I was I had a conversation with Charles the other day, and we were just kind of, just having a conversation. And towards the end of it, I had this moment where I told him, I said, well, I think a lot of us know who our Jewish friends are now, right? Because we've seen a lot of people that we interact with, that we work with, like social media, have been very vocal about what's happening in the Middle East, right? Some people that I didn't know were Jewish, and some people I didn't know, were so passionate about what's happening over there. So I think that's good. I think the other piece I want to so this is about so many different things. It's not about plagiarism. It's about racism in the United States of America. And it's about racism in the Middle East as well, right? So I want to bring some data forward for you all to consider, because this whole conflict over there has me sick to my stomach, and I just don't know what I can do about it, except talk about it on the show. To date, there have been 23,000 casualties on the Palestinian side, right? Somewhere about 8,000 or 9,000 of those being children, right? To date, there have been about 1,100 casualties on the Israeli side. So what we saw as an initial surprise attack, from Hamas, which was totally uncalled for and unjustified, has been we've seen this out of magnitude response, right, which continues today, right? So when we get to this point in time, if we're actually going to have an authentic conversation about Jewish people feeling safe, and about, Palestinian people being safe, and people being able to vocally advocate for the freedom and emancipation of the Palestinian people, we actually have to look at what's going on there. And again, 23,000 people in Gaza have been killed since the start of this conflict, versus 1,200 on the Israeli side. Right? That's some bullshit. And so, and everything else just gets kind of caught up in it. There's a casualty here. Dr. Gay's a casualty of this whole thing. Right? But that's kind of where my head is thinking about this general topic. So.
Yeah, man. I would just say,
Dan,
I think y'all did an incredible job with today's show. And again, I understand, man. I get to my Jewish friends and Jewish people here, man, I understand. I pray for you peace. I get it. And to Palestinian folks, again, I'm ignorant to it to a certain degree. I hear things and whatnot. But I know people on both sides of that thing is hurting. There's a lot of deep rooted beliefs there. So, that's a lot of deaths. That's a lot of casualties. And I'm really sorry to hear that. Darfur is still in the middle of its own genocide. It's not over. Actually, the whole South Sudan is still immersed in very, very, very raging civil war. Myanmar is enraged right now in civil war. If are we as a people, and I'm not talking even the Jewish or Palestinian people, because they are in check with themselves and they are there. But for the rest of the folks that are now caring about genocide and things like this, some simple Google searches. And a lot of those genocides are happening on the continent of Africa with people that look like me. So when you see that and you hear that, all this stuff becomes a little bit tougher. I'm glad that Dr. Gay is still gonna get paid. I'm glad that she's gonna be okay. And I get that. But I do think that it's allowed us to have a larger set of conversations. So thank y'all for just the discourse and being able to talk this out. And hopefully we become less obsessed with mess in 2024, although I don't think that's going to happen.
Jubilee?
Oh, wow. What a way to start the year.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. Coming out hard.
Just a couple of thoughts back to my first point about money. Like Dave, you said racism, which I think, you know, it definitely is a huge part of it. And I think money might even supersede race in this situation. Like, there's a quote, I didn't get to actually look at who said it, but it's simple. Money rules the world to the end. And I think that money coupled with like ownership or perceived ownership, when you think about Harvard and these other elite spaces that were founded on certain principles, regardless of who they let come through the door, regardless of who they let think that they were in charge, right? From this, we understand that these are all figureheads. And for as long as you say what we want you to say, and as long as you play to our, you know, to our beliefs and advocate for the things that we say, right, based on that are connected to how we founded this space. If you're not doing those things, then you're out of here. And we have, to Charles's earlier point, the money, the wherewithal, the bandwidth, the influence, the power, the respect, the allies to be able to do that. And like I think, you know, the old people say when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. And I think in the history of our country, we see how these things play out time and time again with money and race. So for me, I celebrate Dr. Day just as a fellow Black woman. You know, I think she did the best she could. I think, you know, I'm proud of her in that she was able to stand amidst all of this, you know, BS. I'm sure she's going to take away some learning experiences and all of that. But it's a cruel and hard lesson and in the way that she had to learn.
Yeah.
I mean, that was super well said. I want to thank our audience. You came in awesome today, man. We had so many good comments. So many wonderful people participating. To my boy Alonzo, man, thank you so much. No, you cannot use the F word, and it depends on what insult word you want to use from the 1800s. I want to advocate that everyone come back every Tuesday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern time, on behalf of Dr. Charles Cole III, the lovely Miss Jubilee Ransom, and the Beard of Knowledge, David Castillo. We are the South Star Classroom. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you all next week. My name is Omar Nar. Peace.